No one wanted her at the alien slave market until a human said, "I'll take her." The marketplace stank of fear and desperation mixed with the sharp metallic scent that seemed to follow the Krillian slavers everywhere they went. Zara stood on the auction platform, her blue skin marked with scars that told stories she wished she could forget, and her forearms hung limply at her sides because fighting had stopped making sense 3 cycles ago when her home world burned and her family turned to ash. In front of her eyes, the other slaves around her were prettier and stronger and more useful for the tasks that buyers wanted. And she knew this because she had watched 17 auctions before hers and seen how the bidders looked at merchandise with cold, calculating eyes that measured worth in credits and labor potential. She was small for her species, and the injury to her lower left arm had never healed properly, and the brand on her shoulder marked her as a troublemaker because she had tried to escape twice in the beginning before the hope died inside her chest like a star going cold. The auctioneer was a tall, insectoid creature with clicking mandibles that translated her worth into galactic common, and the number he started with was insultingly low, and even that number met with silence from the crowd of buyers who shifted their attention to the stronger specimens waiting behind her. Zara kept her eyes down because looking at the buyers only made the shame worse, and she had learned that the less she seemed to care, the easier it was to breathe through the moments when her value was reduced to numbers on a holographic display. 3 times the auctioneer lowered the price, and 3 times the silence stretched like a physical thing pressing down on her shoulders until she wondered if they would simply discard her in the waste zones where unsold merchandise went to die slowly. Then a voice spoke from the back in a language she recognized as human common, and the accent was strange, but the words were clear. "I will take her." The marketplace went quiet in a way that felt different from before because humans were new to the galactic stage, and everyone knew they were weak and foolish and had no business buying slaves when they barely had enough resources to keep their own colonies running. The crowd parted, and Zara risked a glance up to see a human woman walking forward with confident steps that seemed too bold for someone whose species had just learned how to travel between stars a few decades ago. The woman had dark hair pulled back in a simple tail and brown eyes that did not look at Zara the way buyers usually looked at merchandise, and she wore clothes that were practical rather than decorative, with patches on the shoulders that marked her as part of some human organization Zara did not recognize. The auctioneer seemed confused, and his mandibles clicked rapidly as he confirmed the sale price, which the human paid without haggling and without showing any emotion that would suggest she cared about the credits leaving her account. Within minutes, the transaction was complete, and Zara found herself following the human woman through the crowded marketplace with a new collar around her neck that transmitted her ownership information to anyone who scanned it. The woman did not speak until they reached a docked ship that was small and worn, but maintained with obvious care, and once inside, she turned to Zara with an expression that seemed almost apologetic. "My name is Katie Brooks, and I run supply missions for human settlements on the Outer Rim, and I need crew members who understand what it means to survive when everything is against you." Zara said nothing because speaking without permission usually earned punishment, and she had learned this lesson with bruises that took weeks to fade. Katie seemed to understand the silence, and she moved to a control panel on the wall and typed in a sequence that made the collar around Zara's neck beep once before falling open and clattering to the floor. "You are not my slave, and you are not my property, and I bought you because leaving you there felt wrong. And humans have this annoying habit of doing stupid things when we think something is unfair." Zara stared at the collar on the floor and then at Katie, and the words would not come because her brain could not process what was happening, and freedom was not something that existed in her world anymore. Katie picked up the collar and threw it in a waste disposal unit where it vanished with a grinding sound that felt like the death of something heavy. "I need a crew member who knows engineering and who can fix things when they break, because ships like this break constantly, and the manifest said you were trained in multi-system repair before your world was invaded." Zara found her voice, though it came out rough from disuse. "Why would you help me when humans barely have resources for themselves, and everyone says your species is foolish for trying to compete in galactic trade?" Katie smiled, and it was not the cold smile of a buyer, but something warmer that Zara had not seen directed at her in so long. She had forgotten what kindness looked like, because my grandmother always said that the measure of people is not in how they treat the powerful, but in how they treat those who have nothing. And I figure if humans are going to make a mark in this galaxy, we might as well do it by being decent. She gestured to a small cabin, with a bunk and a storage locker. This is your space and you can lock it from the inside and nobody comes in without your permission. And meals are communal in the galley at 0800 and 1800 ship time. And if you want to leave at any port, I will pay for your transport to wherever you want to go. Zara felt something crack inside her chest, and it hurt worse than any beating she had endured, because hope was more dangerous than despair when you had learned to live without it. What do you want from me? In return, Katie looked surprised by the question. I want you to help keep this ship running, and I want you to teach me about your skills. And maybe eventually I want you to trust that not everyone in this universe is interested in taking from you. The first few days were difficult because Zara kept waiting for the trap to spring, and for Katie to reveal her true intentions. But the human woman treated her like a person rather than property, and asked her opinions on repairs and listened. When she explained how different systems worked, Katie's ship was called the Sparrow, and it was old enough that parts were hard to find, and jury-rigged enough that Zara spent most of her time preventing catastrophic failures in systems that should have been replaced years ago. But the work felt good because it gave her purpose beyond survival, and Katie paid her in credits that accumulated in an account with Zara's name on it. And the first time she saw the balance, she cried in her cabin with the door locked because it represented something she thought she had lost forever. The other crew members were an odd mix of species and backgrounds, and nobody asked about her scars or her past, and they treated her like she belonged, which was more unsettling than kindness because belonging meant having something to lose again. There was Maya, who handled navigation and who was human, like Katie but younger and more talkative, and who had a habit of leaving snacks in places where Zara would find them. There was Corvin, who was a four-armed Thexian like herself but male and older, and he had seen his own share of hardship before Katie found him working in a mining colony under conditions that were barely better than slavery. They became something like a family, though Zara was afraid to use that word because families could be taken away, and she had learned this lesson in fire and screaming. 6 months into her time on the Sparrow, they took a job transporting medical supplies to a colony on the edge of Krillian space, and Zara felt her hands shake when Katie announced the destination. Because the Krillians had been the ones who destroyed her world, Katie noticed the reaction because she noticed everything, and she pulled Zara aside in the cargo bay. We do not have to take this job, and there are always other runs and other contracts. Zara took a breath that hurt her chest. The colonies need supplies and people will die without them. And my fear does not matter more than their lives. Katie studied her face for a long moment. Your fear always matters, and do not let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise. But if you want to do this, then I will make sure you are safe. The run went smoothly until they reached the colony and found a Krillian warship in orbit conducting inspections on all incoming vessels. Zara hid in the engine room while Katie dealt with the inspection team, and she could hear their clicking voices through the walls and smell that metallic scent that made her want to run even though there was nowhere to go. The inspection lasted 30 minutes that felt like days, and when it was over, Katie came to find her sitting on the floor with her arms wrapped around her knees. They are gone, and we delivered the supplies, and you were brave even though you were terrified, and that is what courage actually is. Zara looked up at her. I was not brave, and I was hiding. Katie sat down beside her on the cold metal floor. Being brave does not mean not being afraid, and it means doing what needs doing even when every part of you wants to run, and you did that. Something shifted in Zara's chest again, and this time it did not hurt as much. Over the next year, she learned that Katie had her own scars, though they were not visible on her skin, and the human woman had lost her entire family in a colony raid, and had spent 5 years working herself to exhaustion to buy the Sparrow, because having a ship meant having control, and having control meant never being helpless again. They understood each other in ways that did not require words, and when Zara had nightmares, Katie would sit with her until the shaking stopped, and when Katie pushed herself